Right now, stop breathing for just a moment. Not long. Just a few seconds. Notice what your body does next. A pressure builds in your chest. A whisper of panic flickers behind your ribs. Your throat tightens, almost on its own. And somewhere deep in your brain, an ancient alarm just woke up. You probably think holding your breath is about running out of oxygen. It isn't. The truth is stranger, older, and far more clever than that. Because the urge to breathe isn't really about oxygen at all. It's about something else entirely. Something your body has been quietly tracking your whole life. And once you understand it, you'll never hold your breath the same way again. Here's the first surprise. When you stop breathing, your oxygen levels barely change at first. Your blood is already carrying a generous reserve, and your cells keep sipping from it slowly. What changes fast is something else. Carbon dioxide. Every single cell in your body is constantly producing it as a waste product, like billions of tiny chimneys quietly puffing out invisible smoke. Normally, you exhale that CO2 and forget about it. But the moment you hold your breath, the smoke has nowhere to go. It builds up in your bloodstream, second by second, climbing higher with every heartbeat, and your body absolutely, viscerally hates that. Deep inside your brainstem sits a tiny cluster of specialized cells called the central chemoreceptors. Think of them as your body's hypersensitive smoke detectors, wired straight into your survival circuitry. They aren't watching oxygen, they're watching the acidity of your blood, which rises as CO2 climbs. The second that acidity ticks upward, the alarm fires. And the alarm is that urgent, twitchy feeling in your chest telling you to breathe now. So the panic you feel? It isn't suffocation. It's a chemistry alert. Here's the strange part. You could technically still hold your breath much longer at that moment. Your oxygen is fine. Your brain is fine. Your body is just screaming about the CO2 like a kitchen alarm screaming about toast. This is why freedivers train so obsessively. They aren't training their lungs to hold more air, not really. They're training their brains to stay calm while the smoke detector wails, to sit with the discomfort and recognize it as a false alarm rather than a true emergency. And as the seconds tick on, your body starts doing something genuinely beautiful. It triggers something called the mammalian dive reflex. Yes, mammalian. You share this reflex with seals, whales, and otters. The moment your face hits cold water, or sometimes just the moment you hold your breath, this ancient program switches on. Your heart rate drops, slowly, deliberately, like a dimmer switch turning down. Blood vessels in your arms and legs squeeze tight, redirecting blood toward your heart, lungs, and brain. Your spleen, yes, your spleen, actually contracts and releases a fresh batch of red blood cells into circulation. It's like your body opens an emergency oxygen vault you didn't know you had. A reserve tank, tucked behind your stomach, waiting your whole life for this moment. This isn't a metaphor, it's measurable. In trained divers, the spleen can shrink by up to 20% during a single breath hold, dumping oxygen-rich cells into the bloodstream like a backup generator kicking in. And the wildest part? You have this reflex too, right now, sitting wherever you're sitting. Splash cold water on your face right now and your heart will visibly slow within seconds. Without your permission. Without your conscious awareness. A reflex left over from a time when our ancestors waded, swam, and ducked beneath the surface long before we ever stood upright on dry land. Here's where it gets even weirder. As the breath hold deepens, your diaphragm, that big dome-shaped muscle under your lungs, starts to twitch. These are called involuntary breathing movements. Your diaphragm contracts in little spasms, trying to suck in air against your closed throat. It feels desperate. It looks dramatic. But here's the secret. These spasms are not a sign you're running out of oxygen. They're another CO2 alarm, louder this time. A second attempt by your brainstem to override your stubborn willpower. And remarkably, at this exact moment, blood is being silently shunted toward your brain at higher pressure than usual. Your most precious organ is quietly getting priority service while the rest of your body politely waits in line. Pause and really feel that for a moment. Your body is running an emergency protocol that is millions of years old, and you are not in charge of any of it. You simply made a small decision to stop breathing. Everything else, every clever subroutine, is fully automatic. Speaking of automatic, here's a question I'm genuinely curious about. What's the longest you've ever held your breath? And where were you when you did it? Underwater as a kid? In a tunnel as a passenger? Hiding from a sibling under a blanket? Drop it in the comments. I read them, and I want to know what your body remembers. Now back to the strangeness. If you push past the spasms, which most people never do, and honestly shouldn't try without training, something even stranger happens. Your blood becomes slightly more efficient at unloading oxygen. As CO2 rises, your red blood cells become more willing to hand over the oxygen they're carrying. This is called the Bohr effect, named after a Danish physiologist over a century ago. The very thing causing your panic is also helping your tissues squeeze out every last drop of oxygen. It's almost poetic. The alarm and the rescue are made of the same molecule. But eventually, if the breath hold continues long enough, real trouble does begin. Oxygen levels finally start to fall in earnest. Your brain, the most oxygen-hungry organ you own, starts to flicker. Vision narrows. Thoughts get fuzzy. Time bends. This is the dangerous zone, and it's exactly why nobody should ever practice extreme breath holding alone or in water without proper supervision. Because here's the cruelest twist of all. By the time you actually start losing oxygen, the CO2 alarm has sometimes quieted down. People black out, feeling strangely calm. That's not a feature, that's a bug. And it's a reminder that this video is curiosity, not instruction. Be kind to your brain. It only has one. Now zoom out for a second and think about what this whole system really is. Your body never actually evolved to measure oxygen directly. It evolved to measure carbon dioxide, because in nature, when CO2 climbs, oxygen is usually about to fall. It's an indirect signal, a proxy, a clever shortcut your ancestors stumbled into millions of generations ago, and it worked well enough that you inherited it unchanged. Your discomfort isn't a flaw. It's a guardrail, a built-in timer that keeps you from holding your breath long enough to actually hurt yourself most of the time. Most animals have something similar, but the human version is unusually flexible. We can override it, train it, push it, even ignore it briefly on purpose. That flexibility is part of why we can speak in long sentences, sing, swim, dive, blow out candles, and whisper secrets. Voluntary control over breathing is one of the rarest gifts in the animal kingdom. Think about that for a second. The thing causing you discomfort right now is also the thing that lets you sing your favorite song. Same muscle, same nerves, same ancient circuit, different setting. And here's one last cute detail before we land this. The very first breath you ever took, the moment you were born, was triggered by exactly this system. A flood of CO2 in your newborn blood lit up those chemoreceptors for the first time, and you gasped. That first cry wasn't sadness, it was chemistry. Your brainstem doing what it had been quietly rehearsing for 9 months in the dark. You've been running this program ever since, every few seconds, without ever thinking about it. Around 20,000 times a day. 500 million times in an average lifetime. And every single one of those breaths is driven not by a craving for oxygen, but by a tiny, tireless smoke detector watching the acidity of your blood. So the next time you hold your breath, diving into a pool, ducking under a wave, blowing out birthday candles, or just sitting at a red light, pay attention to that little flicker of panic in your chest. That isn't suffocation. That isn't weakness. That's a reflex written into you before your great-great-grandparents had names. A reflex that pulled your ancestors back to the surface. A reflex that lit up your very first breath. A reflex that's quietly keeping you alive at this exact second while you read this and forget to notice it. If this rewired the way you think about something as ordinary as breathing, do me a small favor, give this video a like, subscribe to Bodyquirk for more strange truths hiding inside your own body, and tell me in the comments which quirk you want me to unpack next. Because there's a reason your body sighs when you're sad. A reason you yawn when you see someone else yawn. A reason your breathing changes the instant you start to lie. And once you start noticing your breath, you'll realize something almost unsettling. You've been carrying a tiny, ancient ocean inside you your whole life. And it has been breathing for you the entire time.